if you are not enabled to do your best work, whether that's through the general attitude or the collaboration or any of the myriad of ingredients that fill that recipe, the work is not going to be fulfilling to you. Right. And so to me, if you're going to a place and they're not treating you with respect, they're not trusting you to do your best work, or your guys' view of architecture does not align, then, I mean, that to me right there says a lot. And that's when you kind of know that, okay, this isn't the fit, right? The fit keeps coming up. That's the word, right? If it's not only that you don't fit them, but they don't fit you. Welcome to the Archispeak podcast. I'm Evan Troxel. Each episode, Neil Pan, Cormac Phelan, and I have a casual conversation about all things architecture, and we invite you to listen in as we talk about everything in the profession, both the good and the bad. Maybe you're considering a career in architecture, you're still in school, or you've been around the blocks of Corbusier's City of Tomorrow more times than you'd like to admit. Join us in the studio as we stand around the water cooler and talk about why we love our chosen profession. It's time for some Archispeak.
Welcome to episode 68 of the Archispeak podcast. I'm Neil Pan.
I'm Evan Troxel.
And I'm Cormac Phelan.
And this episode of Archispeak is sponsored by Arcat. Visit them at arcat.com. We're also sponsored by Nemetschek Vectorworks and Nemetschek's Vectorworks Design Scholarship, which is now accepting submissions through August 31st, 2015. So we'll talk a little bit more about each one of those later in the show. But first off, let's jump right into it. In our last episode, we talked about finding the right place to work. So I think in this episode, we will really want to discuss a little bit about how do you know if it's maybe not the right place, and maybe a little bit about how do you leave your current job?
Now's the time.
Thrower.
Now's the time, right, Cormac?
Now's the time.
Right.
Oh, wait, now is the time.
Yeah, now is the time.
To be honest with you guys, it's either now or even earlier. Maybe it's too late. I mean, firms are really hiring. This is kind of a change in things from what we've seen.
And I know people who've been looking for work who say there's no work out there, but then I also hear firms saying we can't find the right people. So it seems like a little bit of both.
Well, you know what? We've always, my wife and I, when we moved to the D.C. area from Florida, we moved at the time of the recession. And one of the reasons why we moved is because there were jobs available here that weren't really available anywhere else. And, one of the things that we'd always wanted to do is, try to move back to the Detroit area, where we're both from. My wife grew up there. I was born there. And we've always kind of wanted to move back there. And I don't know if I've ever told this story or not, but, I sent off 60, and I do mean 60 resumes to the Detroit area. 60.
Yep.
And I didn't get a single call from any of them. And I probably chose maybe 25 to do follow-up phone calls with. And of that 25, a handful of them were no, we're laying off staff, or no, we're going out of business. And so Detroit was hit hard, obviously. There was plenty of places that were hit hard. Florida, Michigan, California, they were all hit pretty hard. And so what I like to see as an indicator is, how is Detroit bouncing back? And so my wife actually, for curiosity's sake, she always looks at the AIA postings and stuff in the Detroit area, or Craigslist, or this or that, or however else. And there are jobs out there. There's actual, honest to goodness, not tech architects, but architects, project managers, and people, designers and stuff like that. And so it feels like a really good indicator to me that maybe jobs aren't bouncing back as vigorously as they were, but they are coming back. And, there are those times when, you're at a firm and you may feel like it's, either you've worn out your welcome or, just maybe they're going in a different direction than you're going, or, whatever the case may be, that, it's time to start looking elsewhere, or maybe you just want the next step in your career that, your current place of employment isn't going to be able to give you, and, it's time to move on.
So what are those hints? What are those hints, Cormac?
Last week we talked about a listener sent us in a bunch of questions, right? And we covered a lot of that about, can you dare to dream and things like that. And so it sounds like you're talking from personal experience here, Cormac.
Are you guys really trying to bait me into this? All right, fine. 2 weeks ago, as of the 7th of August, I put in my 2-week notice at my current place of employment, and done a lot of great projects there and met a lot of really good people. But I think my course in my career at this stage of my advanced years were that I was looking for something else. I was looking for a new challenge, looking for more collaboration, more just there were a variety of different things, and I'd like for you guys to help and bail me out of this one.
Well, hey, I was not trying to bait you. I was just trying to be more generic. Like, hey, what could be some of the things? I was hoping for
generic too, and that Mr. Trucks there.
So yeah, so you can call out Evan on this one.
No, I think this is earned. This is not.
It is
anything else, and I'm super excited and happy for you, and that's generally, I mean, that is the reason why I brought it up, because I think that there's been a lot of times where you've really bitten your tongue about the types of projects and the type of people, and there's been a lot of reasons, and I think this happens at every firm, so I'm definitely not saying that this was just your situation, but you were not happy, right. And I think you even talked about that before we even really officially started the show, is that you, and I think that this is probably just a general statement to be made, is that you need to be happy doing what you're doing. And that is one of the biggest indicators of when you should leave a place, is if you are not happy doing what you're doing there, because you will not do good work if you are not happy about the work you are doing.
And sometimes, you can go through the motions of trying to do the best, that you can or whatever. But, there's always that nagging thing in the back of your mind, knowing that this is not the right place for you. This may not be the right fit for you. People may or may not share your same kind of like goals and visions of what you want your career to be. And,
and not even your career, but just the projects, right? I mean, ultimately, and I know you well enough to know that it is all about the project. Yes. And to me, that is the mark of a good architect, is that it is not about their ego, and it is not about the awards. It is about the client and what they're getting out of the project. And it's also about what you're getting out of the project and what your firm is getting out of it, because we do architecture.
Yes.
And so, to me, if you are not enabled to do your best work, whether that's through the general attitude or the collaboration or any of the myriad of ingredients that fill that recipe, the work is not going to be fulfilling to you. Right. And so, to me, if you're going to a place and they're not treating you with respect, they're not trusting you to do your best work, or your guys' view of architecture does not align, then, I mean, that to me right there says a lot, and that's when you kind of know that, okay, this isn't the fit, right? The fit keeps coming up. That's the word, right? If it's not only that you don't fit them, but they don't fit you.
Right. And we even talked about it last week, talking about whether you should find like your little niche of whether or not this particular architecture style or that architecture style or this type of building or that type of building. We talked about that, and that's fine, but sometimes you can get into doing some work and you're fulfilled with the type of work, but maybe not the delivery method. And I guess right now, and I'm sort of so hesitant because it is upon me right now that I don't want to I don't want to say too much that, sounds like it's a negative or whatever, but, ultimately at the end of the day, and this is the one thing that I guess I've been fooling myself, is that at the end of the day, you're quitting a job because you don't like that place.
I also think it's even more so that, and I've heard this from interesting, leadership in people in different leadership roles. They say people don't quit the place; they quit the person.
Yeah.
And I know that that's a big part of it.
I was just going to throw out there, I think the people, you mentioned that earlier. For me personally, I mean, one of the reasons why I left one job before was the people. The fit wasn't right, and I had some personal issues with some of the people I worked with. It was not the right situation. And yet at another time I left, I did enjoy the people. That all worked fine. It was more just the job. Yeah. It was, in that case, it was the job. So it can be sometimes different indicators at different places. But really, I think, Evan, you had it right. Are you happy? And if you're not happy, then you need to make a change.
And I think happy is kind of a difficult word because to me it's
fulfilled, satisfied,
inspired. Yeah, I mean there's a lot of words that I think can be put into that.
I'm glad you pulled out inspired, because that that a lot of times can be a career, or at least maybe a job killer. Let's not say career killer, but a job killer is that, are you feeling inspired by the work that you're doing every day? And if you're not, you really start, you're always starting to take stock in, is this what I need to be doing? This is what I should be doing. I tell this to my kids when I was like, I want you to look for a career. I don't want you to just look for a job. And he was like, well, what's the difference between a career and a job? And I was like, a job is something that you do to get a paycheck. A career is something that you do, enjoy, love, and are excited to do every single day. And sometimes we start off, everybody goes into every firm with the best of intentions to, do their best and give it their all. And, really try to, everybody goes in thinking that they're going to, either be the next Frank Gehry, or they want to, say, look what I can do. And they work really hard, and, they're coming at it with such, bright eyes and everything else. And then as, you progress and kind of get into the system and stuff, sometimes it works perfectly. And you're like, this is a great place. I'm going to be here forever. And then sometimes it's going to be like, I really thought it was something, but it's something else.
I think that happens a lot.
It does.
And that's a really hard thing to discern in an interview.
It is.
And so, and from firsthand experience that interviews can go very long, and that's probably a good thing, right?
Yes,
because you can talk about,
it's an interesting indicator.
You can talk about a lot. And yes. I think that, and we've talked about this before, but that is your doorway into finding out as much as you possibly can about what that future is going to look like, instead of potentially wasting your time spending months and months, even years there, and then finally deciding, what, this really isn't even what I thought it was going to be.
Let me throw this out here, and it's a slight sidetrack, but not really. It's still related. But okay, so typically when you're leaving, you're going to be looking elsewhere, or you're gonna, if you've left because you've been let go or whatever, or if you've quit on your own, you're going to be looking for a new job. And notice that when you're looking for a new job, a lot of times, a lot of firms don't really, they want to sit down and they want to talk to you and get to know you, but you never really honestly have an opportunity, especially a lot of young kids who are just coming out of college, who've never really interviewed, based off of their experience of the profession and stuff. They've never really interviewed where they know what, and I'm putting myself in this situation where I've been to interviews and I can sell myself, but I usually did a really bad job of trying to feel out and learn about the place that I'm going to be working. And I really changed, my tact now that, I'm older, longer in the tooth, or whatever we want to call it. But I've seen what are good firms and bad firms, and, medium firms, and all of these other things. And I developed a new question. And it's a simple question too. Because they always ask you should ask your interviewers, some questions. And because you don't really have the opportunity to get that feeling of what the firm is like, figured out a way you can actually do that with the simple question of, how long have you been there? And why have you stayed? Because you're now putting them on the spot to have them explain to you why it is that they work there, and so you get the opportunity to listen to them as firsthand experience on why they enjoy coming to work and why they feel inspired about doing what they do. But if they can't answer that, and they're like, well, it's really close to home, and I like the paycheck, and I can go home and feed my dog at lunchtime. You're not getting insight into the place. That should be a huge red flag.
And also how they work, right? Because
exactly.
I think that's a perfect opportunity for them to talk about that kind of stuff, how they collaborate or they don't, or what you could even ask, tell me about your tenure here. Like, how have you progressed? And if they can't answer that question because maybe they've been stuck in the same position the whole time, or there is no plan, it'll become fairly obvious pretty quickly.
Yeah, because like you said, if they've kind of been stuck in the same thing, it's just like, okay, so if you've been a project manager for the past 10 years with no growth upward, then what is my chance to, move upward if, because you're sort of in my way, kind of thing.
Yeah, these are all indicators, right? Well, yeah, if there's no room for the person above you to go, then there's probably no room for you to go. I think that's pretty obvious. So, yeah, totally. Great questions to ask.
And really the collaboration one, it's really talking, because you want to know why they are there and why they enjoy being there and why they've stayed there. Heard some interesting, it's like, oh, I've been here for 16 years, and they've gone through, talking about, why they're there, and, usually that kind of lets them say, well, I started off here and I kind of did this, and I kind of grew up here, and then there was this opportunity for do this, and, and the great thing about the firm is that we do this, and, and all that other stuff. And if you see the excitement in their eyes and in their tone, and they're saying it with a smile on their face, then that's a great indicator that this is a place that is really going to foster and nurture your experience and kind of move forward.
Totally agree.
All right, well, I think that takes us up to our first sponsor, and that is ArcCAD. Would you like someone to draw CAD details for you? Maybe create BIM objects for you, write specifications too. Would you like someone to do this all for free? ArcCAD has already done all of this for you. Search the ArcCAD libraries for these products and more, free of charge, with no registration required to download any of the content. ArcCAD has created a website devoted to you, the building professional, to find building product information fast and hassle-free. Check out ArcCAD today at arcat.com. And we want to thank ArcCAD for being a continuing sponsor of Archispeak. So make sure you go check them out again at arcat.com. So guys, we've kind of established some really good ideas about why a place is not the right place for you. How about finding the way to leave? What is a good way to do that?
Get something else lined up first.
Okay. You stole that one from me, because I was going to say, well, I haven't always listened to my mother on this particular bit of advice. And, I've regretted those. But my mother always said, if you're unhappy with the job that you have and you're considering leaving it, you should always have a job lined up before you quit your last job. And it makes perfect sense. I like I said, I haven't always listened to it, where somebody said, hey, you need to move your car, and I impulsively said, all right, fine, I'm moving it home with me in it.
Well, this reminds me of an old story my dad told me when he was teaching me how to drive four-wheel drive and off-road stuff, and it was funny because today we had to do that to get around some crazy traffic and car accidents and stuff. On the freeway was completely shut down on our way home from vacation, and we had to go up over a mountain basically to get home on time. And it just reminded me of that time when, I have a four-wheel drive, and my dad said, when you go off-road, you don't put the car in four-wheel drive. And I'm like, why not? I mean, you're in the dirt, right? And he said, well, if you're in two-wheel drive and you get stuck, then you put it in four-wheel drive, right? And the reason is because then you actually have a tool to get out of being stuck. And to me, this is the same thing, where you don't go into an interview without having a current job, because if you find out you don't like that place, then you're stuck and you're going to be treading water for who knows how long. And it's basically being unemployed at that point, right? And you never know how long you're going to be unemployed for. So you need to have this thing in your back pocket that continues your subsistence, right? If you cannot feed your family and you can't pay the rent and all these things because you were pretty sure that you were going to get that next job, then you are screwed, right? So it's the exact same thing. You've got to have something lined up already before you leave the job. So I think that one is pretty much hopefully obvious, but do you have any other ones that go along with that?
Well, I would say in my experience that in better times, when employment is, or firms are looking, it's a whole lot easier to do that, because most likely, somebody's probably been calling you and looking to see if they can hire you away from a firm. And so that makes that situation much easier. But I know over the last 5 or 6, 7 years, it's been much more difficult to be able to have done that. A lot of people got laid off in 2008 and 9 and 10 and forward, and so you didn't have that luxury of finding or having another job lined up. But if you do have a job and if you're unhappy, as we've stated earlier, and you want to move on, that's the ideal situation. You don't want to necessarily quit and then go look, because actually that could hurt you in your next interview, right? It's like, oh, you're currently employed. Oh, you're not? Why did you quit? It seems sort of irresponsible that you would either A, put yourself in that situation, or be so irresponsible to the firm that you're currently at that you're willing to just like walk out without having something. So it could look bad on you if it's like, well, I'm currently unemployed. Now, if it's currently unemployed because of the recession, which I don't think you could probably use that excuse right now. Maybe in the last couple of years you could have, but I think nowadays you probably can't. So I think it doesn't look fondly on you if you do that. If you've got a good excuse, hey, I'm in school or just got out of school or something like that, I think that's a different situation. And you can explain that away when you're talking to somebody in your interview. So I think having something lined up is something you really should have. But if you can't do that, then you need to have some excuse or some good reason why you don't.
Well, I mean, you did miss the obvious C that you just won the lottery. You're independently wealthy, right?
Do people do that?
It's every argument. No. It is interesting, and I kind of mentioned this.
It's time to wake up, Cormac.
Yeah. Not enough coffee yet.
Fantasy time is over.
A boy can dream.
You got to play to win.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
But, okay, you know what? There is something that is interesting. And again, a little side note here. But I mean, because we've been looking at these kind of indicators of how the job market is and things like that, there are a lot of firms who are hiring again at multiple levels from entry on up. But there is one slow recovery that still isn't quite there, and that's like the project manager. So like if you were, say, laid off as a project manager during the recession and stuff like that, and kind of slowly waiting to, get back into the game and things like that, it is become, I mean, and I'm just basing this off of, the surface of looking at, job boards and things like that, a lot of times the cutoff is at like project architect and not project manager. And, it's kind of interesting that, and I don't know what this indicator means, that, maybe they're looking to either promote from within or develop a project architect to be the next project manager so that they can save themselves on the salary of what would be, a higher salary with a project manager or something. But I don't know. I mean, I don't know if you guys see it. I'm kind of rambling on this one, but it just kind of was interesting that, when I was looking around, that there a lot of firms that are just kind of looking for kind of mid-level to lower-level employees, experience-wise, and that, some of the more senior staff stuff is still a little sparse right now.
Well, I think what I've seen is that there are people who have moved up within the companies, and there are people who are or have retired, and therefore people find themselves in new positions where they have to be out winning the work, and they're out interviewing a lot, and that means that they are not spending the time on the real projects, I'll say in quotes. And so what they're looking for, I think, is trying to find people who can bridge the gap between the graduates who are really technically smart and really design savvy, but don't have any real world experience with putting a set of documents together. With bridging that gap up to the people who are now finding themselves out of the office a lot more. So basically, people coming into mentorship positions where they are giving the mentorship to the younger staff and really developing them into architects, because that seems to be a hole that I've seen in firms all over the place. I keep hearing that from different people all over. It's like those are the people that are really hard to find. And I would imagine that you kind of fall into that category, Cormac. Would you say so?
Yeah.
That was typically your job where you were, right? It was to take on the interns and to take on the new graduates and to kind of show them the ropes and show them how you did things and show them the steps of the process and the way you don't do things and what you document and what you don't and how you do red lines and like all the basic stuff. I think that, stuff that we consider basic now, but stuff that you've got to learn because it is part of the process that you don't necessarily get in school. It sounds like that type of position is what you fill, and I think what probably a lot of our listeners fill too, where they've been around the block a few times and they've done a bunch of projects and they have the experience. And then there's this new group of entitled millennials. You know who I'm talking about. You're listening right now. And just showing them how to do architecture, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's talk about our second sponsor for this episode, and that is Nemetschek Vectorworks. And again, just want to mention that their Vectorworks Design Scholarship is accepting submissions through August 31st. And as part of this scholarship, you students can win up to $10,000 for tuition, housing, textbooks, and more. This is a great thing. So anybody listening that hasn't already entered or is thinking about entering, it's easy to enter. Students just submit their best project, which can be an individual or a group project designed with any software. It doesn't have to be done with Vectorworks. If it is, yay, benefit, yay. But any software you're familiar with, all of the projects will be evaluated, on their individual merits, and you have a chance to win up to $10,000.
Free money.
So free money, right? You're probably already doing this work in school already. Take your project, submit it, and have a chance at winning $10,000. So remember, the submission deadline is August 31st. We're in the first week of August as we record this and release this episode. So you've got a few more weeks to, if you're listening to this in early August, get it in. How do you enter? Go to vectorworks.net/Archispeak. So everybody, get out to your alma maters and let them know that your classmates can win up to $10,000. And this is a really great deal. So remember, submission deadline August 31st, and any student can submit their best project, and it can be an individual or a group project. So we really want to thank Vectorworks for sponsoring this episode of Archispeak. And in fact, Cormac, you actually had a visit to their office this week.
I did. So last week, when they were first episode that they had sponsored, I kind of gave a quick shout out that they were local to me, and then they kind of realized, oh wait, he's like 20 minutes away from us, because they're basically right up the Beltway, and up 95 is Columbia, Maryland, where they're out of. And I would say that the visit was, well, it was awesome, and I want to explain a little bit more about that. But I think they swayed me with a little bit of swag and a little bit of free food. They had their awesome food truck out there, and they got me a bacon and crab cheddar sandwich.
Making me hungry now.
Awesome. And so, I mean, they said that. I'm like, I'm going to be there in 15 minutes. I'll drive fast. I'll get that ticket just so that I can go. No, but actually, what was great is that, they kind of rolled out the red carpet and got an opportunity to meet with a lot of really good people there. And Neil, you actually met a few of them at the AIA convention, and boy, do they remember you. But
thanks.
But no, what was great about they've got such a great operation going on there. A lot of people use, a lot of different softwares and stuff, and and these guys, and not just because they're our sponsor, but these guys definitely deserve a look. But what I think is great about the way that they work in their office, one, it's a completely collaborative type environment that they have there. Everybody's there together. Everybody's there working as a team. And it's like, these are the architecture kind of firms that we're always looking for. And it's really kind of comforting to see the architecture software doing the same thing and working in the same kind of collaborative effort that we do to make our architecture better. They're working the same way to make their architecture software better. And I thought that was really cool, because other than the fact that, they've got this, it was kind of strange. I mean, I honestly didn't expect this, but they had this dartboard with Neil's face on it. And they're just like, let him ask one more residential symbol question. No, they were great. They actually loved that at the AIA convention. Neil asked a bunch of great question. He actually asked some really good questions, and they were just like, we listened to it, and we're going to take this to heart. And what'll be interesting is, I'm not as familiar with the software as you guys are, and but I'm sure going to, because I learned a lot while I was there, and they talked about a lot of different ways, and I love kind of a more streamlined effort that they're putting towards the software. And so I'm definitely going to download it and give it a shot and a trial, just for my own education. But it is something that's kind of fun that they have kind of that same collaborative work environment to make their stuff better as we do with our I mean, it's they've got architects working side by side with everybody else, and so it's almost an intuitive way to work, and they're doing it.
It's awesome.
That's really cool. Yeah, I'm jealous you got a chance to do that. That you're there. Thanks for having us out to their office. That was great, and we really appreciate them sponsoring the show.
And the hospitality was fantastic. I mean, it was great. Great people there. Great work environment. So I definitely thank them for inviting me up there.
So guys, I want to get into some of the more nitty gritty stuff about your. Okay, so we've kind of talked about if it's the right place, and some some suggestions about before you leave what you should make sure you do. But I want to talk about like that letter of resignation and maybe that exit interview. How do you approach the letter of resignation and the exit interview? What's been your guys' experience, or any suggestions?
Well, mine's pretty fresh in my mind.
Oh, please do tell.
All right. So, I actually had my exit interview before I sent off my letter of resignation, which I technically still sort of have to do. But by the time this is aired, then I will have done it. To me, I think it's an opportune time to discuss, to be very creative in your discussion about, one, why you're leaving. But, I also took it as an opportunity to talk about what I feel are opportunities missed, with me on development, but what are opportunities that they can build on for, just growth and development with, new staff, with, team building, with collaboration and things like that. And it wasn't about, any negativity or animosity. It was about, really, I took more of an opportunity to, talk about where areas of improvement for me are and where areas of improvement for them are, to make them a stronger, better firm, to retain people and to really kind of invigorate and inspire people in the office. And, I think it went well. I mean, it wasn't anything negative, or it wasn't anything, like angry or stuff like that. I mean, people, quitting is never an easy thing, but as I was, kind of saying, there's no good time to quit. So, but when you should.
Yeah, I think it's a perfect time to be really honest.
Yeah.
Because that, even though it may not be something that they want to hear, is something that could be useful. It is important that they understand why you do not want to work there anymore, or why you're going to work somewhere else, maybe for some other opportunities that you weren't getting there, or that you didn't perceive you could get there. I think a lot of firms have lots of situations and scenarios that you could fit into to broaden your career in architecture, but operations within firms get compartmentalized, and people don't tend to see outside their compartment. And so if you're looking for other types of experience and they don't fully understand that you no longer want the type of experience that's within the department that you're in, a lot of times that does mean, unfortunately, leaving the firm when it could have been as simple as a shift within the firm. But that's important for them to realize, too, that they are maybe operating within silos that need some breaking down, so that architects get well-rounded within the corporation. I mean, there's so many different jobs that can be done in an architecture office, and a lot of times people just don't think broadly enough about what the firm has to offer the employees. So if you are looking for something else, really try to, and hopefully this comes before the exit interview, but really try to help people understand what you're looking for. And if they immediately kind of shut you down and say, no, really, maybe here's the opportunity, and spell it out for them. And then if you get shut down again, then maybe it is time to go look somewhere else. And then you can bring that up in the exit interview. So
have either one of you been in an exit interview?
I went on an exit walk with somebody once. It was like, I was working at the company I was at before the one I'm at now, and a guy had been brought in to kind of change the way the company operated, and it turned a lot of people off, or they got laid off, or they were fired because they didn't fit the new model that this person had developed. And so one day he's like, "Hey, you want to go get a water over at the store down the street?" So I kind of knew what he was talking about. So we left the building so that we could have a really open, honest talk. And that's really what it was about. And he was like, "Man, I see like maybe 3 people here continuing." And I mean, obviously the writing had been on the wall for quite a while that the company was kind of losing its ground, and it was going to go under, or something major had to change. And at the end of the talk, or the walk, whichever came first, he said, "So I want you to be one of those 3 people." And he said, "So I kind of need to know if you want to be one of those 3 people." and I said, "I interviewed at another firm yesterday, and I took the job, and so I'm giving you my notice right now because I just didn't see it working out."
So you're like, nope.
So that is my...
Wow.
Right. And it wasn't out of disrespect, but it was just the reality of the situation. It was like I had seen the writing on the wall. I didn't 100% agree with the way that he had been handling things, and I didn't think it was a good fit. And it wasn't like it had never been a good fit. It was like all of a sudden it was not a good fit because this new guy came in and was changing everything. And even though the company wasn't doing well, the way that situations were being handled was really hard to go to work and enjoy what I did. Right. And so I knew, like, oh man, it was stressful and I couldn't deal with that stress anymore. And not to say that architecture isn't stressful, but it was like dreading going to work. And if you're dreading going to work, man, I mean, you just can't do that to yourself. You talked about a guy who was really sick, right? Yeah. That you had talked to about the place that he was working. And so, I mean, the workplace can make you sick. And so that is no way to treat yourself. You can't do that.
He was in an environment that he was really kind of, it stressed him out because he wanted to do the best job that he could. He wasn't really getting very well mentored, but, he was, and he was just worried all the time, and it really was affecting him physically. And, those are definitely the indicators that you should, when the job is making you sick, and you joke around and say, oh, I'm sick of this job, No. He was physically sick by the stress that was, thrown on him from this job, and it just, you can't work that way. We've sort of talked about the kind of, like last show actually was a lot of times, and you were talking about this just a few seconds ago about, okay, so here we are in this, sometimes you can kind of get into this niche practice where, you're going to be doing a particular type of building or something there. And, a lot of times as you start to develop and grow, you were just talking about, wanting to look for the next step up to improve your career, to improve your knowledge in the profession and things like that, and if it's really not there, I mean, that's kind of sometimes, the frightening aspect of working for like boutique firms that do specialized things that don't have the opportunity to give you different avenues of gaining more experience in different types of building types, or different types of like interaction with clients and things like that. And if you're looking, I always say this to every intern that comes in, it's you make the profession what you want it to be. And if you want to be kind of a broad spectrum type architect where you've got a variety of different architectural experiences, where you've done residential and you've done commercial and you've done like schools and you've done this and that and stuff like that, smaller niche firms aren't really going to be where it is. Or, you may be getting to a point where you're like, no one can really learn everything that they can learn about, a specific building type or whatever, because there's always some interesting challenge that, kind of throws what you thought you knew into like a little loop. But there's this opportunity with, the job market, getting better and stuff like that, to basically, and you said it best, Evan, is to seek out this opportunities to grow your experience.
I was going to say, I've been on I don't know if I've been on one or two different exit interviews. I know one in particular, and Evan, mine wasn't a walk. It was actually kind of like an exit lunch that I was taking. But we left the office.
Dead man eaten.
Yeah, dead man eaten. Yeah, exactly. And I think it was the right opportunity. I think if you have the ability to leave the office, I think that's a good indication that they're looking for some honest feedback from you. They don't want you to maybe be intimidated by, hey, we're in the office, somebody's going to overhear us, or somebody's going to walk in on us, or something like that. It's at least in my case, this was a one-on-one. I left with the general manager of the firm, and we had a very honest conversation over lunch about why I was leaving. And that I think they really, if they go to that step, they really want some honest feedback from you. At least that was my experience. And so I gave it in a very positive manner as much as possible, right? But you don't want to lie to them, or I mean, you don't want to be mean either, right? I mean, you don't want to come across as a total jerk and tell them, wow, this is a crappy place to work and I hate this place. I mean, you may not want to be totally honest, but, or brutally honest, maybe is the right term, right? You don't want to be brutally honest, but be honest with them. If there's a particular person there that you just don't get along with, or you don't like the way they operate, then find a way to communicate that in a constructive manner. Or if it's the types of projects, or you can point back to, Evan, you mentioned earlier about trying to work within the firm to find opportunities that you can grow, and you can use the exit interview as your opportunity. It's like, well, okay, we talked about this in my last review and nothing happened. And then in my next review after that, we talked about this or that and nothing ever happened. So I'm tired of waiting, or I don't see this opportunity here, even though I've brought it up several times. And that may just be a structural failure of the firm, or maybe just an opportunity lost within the firm. Or as you mentioned, the firm is so siloed off that nobody really noticed. Or maybe you want to go in a direction that the firm's not willing or wants to go in. And then it's feedback for them. And so if it's a situation like that where maybe you wanted to work on a product type that they don't do, that they're not going to branch out to do, then there's no harm, no foul. Everybody knows, okay, great. It's good working with you. Maybe we can work together again in the future. I think the most important thing with the letter of resignation and in this exit interview is to try not to burn any bridges.
Oh, of course.
And I think that's really critical for your career.
I would agree. I think it's extremely a small community when you really think about it. The longer we're in this, it's like everybody knows everybody. You know all the firms around you. You know who's been where, and everybody kind of jumps around here and there, and that's just expected. But I totally agree, Neil. You don't want to burn your bridges. You do want to probably bite your tongue on a few things. You want a good reference. I mean, you don't want someone to call your previous supervisor and find out that you left via text message one day and just said, I'm never coming back. I mean, just from experience with my wife owning her own company, there are so many crazy ways to quit that we never thought would ever happen. But people just say, I'm never coming in again. They'll just email you, I quit, I'm done. Can I get my last check? They just don't show up after lunch. There's so many unclassy ways to do it. And so my advice, I think that parallels Neil's, is do it in a very classy way. You want to make an impression, even if the people that you're speaking with do not handle it in a classy way, you still should. Because
take the high road.
You never know what's going to happen in the future. You just never know. And so you just need to be as classy as possible.
And I think that's a really important message for our listeners out there that may be earlier in their career, that maybe because of the economy have had to move around, and now since things are getting better, they have an opportunity to maybe make a choice to move around, where maybe our previous, we didn't really have a choice before. And so I think it's very important to really drive this home with those that are still, fairly early in their careers, or maybe just getting out of school and their first couple of internships or something like that. Because as Evan just said, you never know how things are going to turn out. And our careers are long. They last a long,
decades.
We're going to be doing this for essentially decades. The rest, like we said in our last episode, 40 to life, right? You're going to be doing this for such a long time that you will find that the relationships that you build at each of the firms that you may work for will come back to either hopefully be a benefit to you in the future, whether it's a collaborative process with people you used to work with, or a favor.
Or that person comes to work at the new place that you've already been working at. I mean, there's so much movement.
Yeah.
It's not just you.
Exactly. So you really want to build those relationships throughout your career, because they can be very helpful in the future. So I think that's really a nice way to kind of say towards the end of this show, is that these are important things you should take a lot of care in crafting your resignation letter, in crafting your thoughts about your exit interview and what you want to say. And maybe you do bite your tongue.
It's okay to not say something. Yep.
Exactly. But I think it's an opportunity, though, to be honest with a firm, because they might want some, or they're going to, especially if they take you outside of the office or a walk, like you mentioned, Evan, they're looking for some feedback. So, all right. I think that's a good place to wrap this one, guys. If you've got any questions or comments about this episode, visit our website at archispeakpodcast.com. There you'll find links to our individual Twitter accounts and our Archispeak Podcast Facebook page, so you too can join in on the conversation that's happening all between the weeks between episodes. So if you have I'm going to say an inspiring tale to share with us, because I want them to be inspiring. But if you've really got a great horror story about quitting, this would be the time to share it.
That'd be fun.
Call.
Sure, some juicy gossip might not be that bad.
Oh, absolutely. So call Archispeak at 415-484-8496. And if you don't want it shared on the show, let us know. We won't. But we may refer to it, but we'll keep all your names out of it if you want.
The names of the guilty have been changed.
That's right. Exactly. So, and just as a reminder to sign up for the show notes so that you'll get all of the links and other information that we talk about on the show. You can do that at archispeakpodcast.com. On the right-hand side, you can sign up for the show notes. Those go out the Sunday that the episode airs. And just also another reminder, if you haven't already done so, please leave us a review on iTunes. It really helps get the message out about the show and helps people find it too. So thanks again for listening, and stay subscribed.
Good night.
Auf Wiedersehen. Ja, auf Wiedersehen.
What are you talking about?
You.
What do you mean, me?
You said, what am I talking about? I'm talking about you.
What is a visit? What is that, a visiting?
What?
What did you say there? I couldn't make it out.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Oh. For what?
Visiting.
I'm visiting? Oh. All right.
I'm visiting.
No. Auf Wiedersehen.
What is it?
Goodbye in German.
God, thank you.
You have never heard Auf Wiedersehen?
No.
I mean,
I've been to Germany twice. I probably have heard it before, but it's...
You'd never said goodbye to them?
I couldn't speak German.
They never said goodbye to you when they
Oh,
were
Jesus. It was 20...
Your Yankee ass out of there?
It was 20 plus years ago. I don't remember. All right.
I'm gonna get Vectorworks that dartboard.
get. This is what you get. This is the schedule. This is the set. It's unpredictable as you forget.